are back. Now, the one thing I did forget to tell you is what are rational functions? What is the name of the graph? So you know how quadratic functions, the names for them are parabolas. Sorry, my phone is going off. I didn't mean for that to happen. I apologize. All right, so next. So for rational functions, their name of rational functions, the graph is called a hyperbola. So one of the things I want you to make sure you know is that the name of these are called hyperbolas. These are called hyperbolas. All right, so just something important that we should make sure that we know. Now we're going to talk about writing a graph and how do you write the function based off of a graph. So there's only two things that you need from there. You need two sets of coordinate pairs. One of the coordinate pairs that you need happen to be the XY coordinate that is on the actual graph alone. So this is super important. And then the other one that you need is the points at where the horizontal and the vertical asymptote intersect. So if you look, the vertical and the horizontal asymptote intersect right here. And that point is -1, -4. Okay? That -1, -4 happens to be my HK. And this happens to be my Y. Oh, sorry, not Y. My bad. And this point right here happens to be my X, Y. Okay? So those are the two sets of coordinate points that you will need in order to write out the function. So we recall that the function, which I've left it on your notes, is written as f of x is equal to a divided by x minus h plus k. In order to write this function, we would need to calculate and solve for a first. All right? So if you look at this, remember f of x is a function of y, so f of x is y, right? So we look at it and you're like, okay, do I have a y? Yes, I do. Do I have an x value? Yes, I do. Do I have an h? Yes, I do. And do I have a k? Yes, I do. So you have a total of 4 knowns with 1 unknown. And that unknown that we're solving for is a. So step 1, the first thing you want to do is identify h and k. So h equals -1, k equals -4. Okay? Step 2, identify x and y. X is equal to -2, y is equal to +3. All right. I've identified those 4 points. Step 3, you will plug in your knowns into your function. So step 3, plug knowns or plug values into function. And remember, for this one, f of x is y. So if I come over here, and I'm going to underline each one, so I'm going to go ahead and make y, I'm going to label it, color it red. I'm going to go ahead and make the x -2. I'll put that orange so you can see exactly where I put everything. K will be in the brown. And the green will be my H. Okay, so now, based off of the colors, if you follow my colors that I identified each value with, I'm going to go ahead and plug everything in exactly how I see it. So instead of putting f of x here, I'm going to remove it and place a 3. So it's 3. So 3 equals to a divided by, and then x is equal to -2 minus minus, notice how h is negative, so I'm going to go ahead and put parentheses so I can account for that -1. And then k is -4. So the final step that you are going to do is you are going to solve for a. So then step 4, we solve for a. So when I solve for a, I'm going to go ahead and add 4 to this side. So 3 plus 4 is 7. And that equals to a divided by -2 minus -1. This becomes a positive, so -2 plus 1 is -1. And you type that exactly in your calculator and you will get -1. And then the last thing you want to do is you're going to go ahead and multiply the -1 to both sides to get rid of it. Leaving you with -7 equals to a. So far, so good. Okay, so the last thing that I want to go ahead and do now that I solved for a, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite the function, including a, h, and k only. You rewrite the function with a, h, and k only. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is, where's my blue marker? I'm going to step 5, and I'm going to rewrite function with h, k, a only. Rewrite the function with h, k, and a only. So if I go ahead and do that, I say a is equal to, oops, not a, f of x. Sometimes I go fast, you know me. F of x is equal to -7. I will shut my phone off right now after we are finished. Just so you know, because I apologize for that. You know I hate when my phone goes off. Okay. Divided by x minus h. Because h is negative, it turns into an x plus 1. So it would be x plus 1. And then k is a -4, so you do -4. And this is my final answer. And I think I did it wrong. I did it right, just kidding. Hold on, I think I made a mathematical error somewhere. Let me find out what I did wrong. That should have been positive.
What?
Because of the way the function is. It should have been positive. A should have been positive because of this. This tells me A is positive, so I made a mistake. Let me figure my mistake out. I apologize for that, guys. Give me a quick second. Let me look at it real fast. Let me see. Can I see the original? Let me see. Let me look at the original. Make sure I put the right. Maybe I put the wrong values in. It should have been. Oh, my bad.
You put the negative in the wrong spot.
I put the negative in the wrong spot. So it really should have been a -3. So this becomes a -3. So when you add 4 minus 3, it's a quick fix, guys. It's a quick fix. So what I did is I accidentally put the negative in the wrong spot. I put -2, 3, and it should have been 2, -3. Okay, this is why I tell you guys it's super important to pay attention to what you're doing, because if not, then you end up making the same mistakes that I made. Remember, these negatives are the difference to you getting an answer right or wrong. I knew that I got the answer wrong as soon as I saw that A was negative, because this right here is a positive A value. When you have hyperbolas right here, that is a positive A value.
And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to interject right here real quick. And the reason why she knew this is something you will go over in the next problem that Ms. Mayase is going to show you, all right? And also, for my students, I constantly ask you, is your answer reasonable? All right? We knew, you wouldn't have known yet because we haven't shown you, why this does not match this particular function. You will see that on the next problem. But this is a key factor as to, is your answer reasonable? All right? So keep in mind, all the time, is my answer reasonable? If it's not, go back and look, just like Ms. Mayase did.
Yes.
It's been
Okay.
a long spring break, ladies and gents.
Yes. Okay, so when that changes, 4 minus 3 becomes a positive 1. So, and I'm going to make all the changes in red so you can see my changes. So that becomes a positive 1. Then we have, this becomes a positive 2. So this becomes a positive 2 because remember right here was positive. So it becomes a 2 minus negative 1, so it becomes a plus 1. So 2 plus 1 ends up becoming 3. Okay, so if it becomes 3, I'm going to multiply this by 3. And 3 times is equal to A. So A is equal to 3. So the only thing that I made a mistake was just my A value. Everything else was still the same, and you could tell everything else was still the same because H and K won't change. The only thing that changed was the fact that I flipped the signs for here. This should have been a positive. That was my mistake. And I hope I know I confused some of you guys. Just go back and say, oh, she flipped the signs. So if you go back and change the signs exactly where I changed them, you'll get 3 is A, okay? All right, so take your time real quick to wrap your head around that real fast, because that was my fault. I promise I won't make the same mistake twice. After all, I very rarely will make a mistake, so you know. All right, now let's go ahead and talk about this one right here. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is follow my steps. So I'm going to go ahead and follow step 1. And by following step 1, I said identify H and K. So we are first going to identify H and K. And again, H and K are the values, the points where the horizontal and vertical asymptotes intersect. So that is at 2, 1. The next thing I want to do, so number one, H is equal to 2 and K is equal to 1. Step 2, identify X and Y. So X and Y is actually this point right here. And again, right now, this is a given point, but you may come across a hyperbola where they don't give you the points. So you can just pick any kind of point you want anywhere on your hyperbola to use as your X or Y value. Because they're always changing. The only thing that are constant that will never change are where the asymptotes lie. Okay? So this one is actually at 3, 0. All right. So then step 2 is X equals to 3, Y equals to 0. All right, step 3 says plug all values into the function. So here we go, step 3, f of x. So I'm going to rewrite this. F of x is equal to a divided by x minus h plus k. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. This is f of x. So that is 0 equals a divided by 3 minus 2 plus 1. Go ahead and give you like 5 or 6 seconds so that you can look at HKXY and look at HKXY and match the points that they're in the right spot. Now that we know that they're in the right spot, we're going to go ahead and move along and we're going to solve for A. And all you're doing is combining the constants. So because here, the 3 minus 2 is in the bottom, it's in the denominator of A. This ends up equaling to 1. So we are going to subtract 1 for these two. These cancel out, so I subtract 1 from here. So it's negative 1 equals to a divided by 1. And just so you know, a divided by 1 is equal to a. So a equals -1. All right, so we just plugged them in. We solved for a. So step 4 was solve for a, which is what we did. And then step 5 is we're going to rewrite the function. So if I rewrite the function, I'm going to go ahead and put f of x. And you know what? I am going to, can you see me over here on this side? Real quick, because I'm going to write it right here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and write f of x here because you'll see y in a bit. So f of x is equal to, a is -1, so -1 divided by x minus 2 plus 1. Okay? Now, you can also, in some cases, and also in your test, you'll probably see it this way as well, you will also see that this negative can also go on the side. Or it can also be written as f of x equals -1 divided by x minus 2 plus 1. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about this negative real quick. Earlier in the previous problem, you saw how the hyperbolas were graphed right here. Okay, the top one was to the right, and the bottom one was in the negative quadrant, right? So this one was more in quadrant 1 in the positive section, and this one's more in the quadrant 3 section. Okay, now if we come over here, notice how the graph has them flipped. And another word for flipped, of course, is reflection. So whenever this is negative, so whenever you see a negative sign, I'm going to go ahead and circle this one. So here's your note. When a is negative, my hyperbola is reflected okay? My hyperbola is reflected across the y-axis, okay? So it is reflected across the y-axis. Oops. I'm writing too quickly for myself. This right here, okay? These are A's. So this shows me A is negative. And hence you'll get this type of function right here. This, if it was A was positive, this would have been on this side, and this would have been on this side. But because A is negative, this goes here, and this goes here. Opposite of what you saw in the previous problem. Okay? All right, so what you have left on this page is you have where it says use the graph to answer each question. It's the same thing. This time it wants you to pick the point. So you're just estimating it. You might not get to the exact closest answer. But I did already put it out, check with your teacher to first give it a shot on your own, check with your teacher to verify to see if you guys got remotely close to the answer. You may be off, you may use fractions, you may not. I came out with whole number answers, so it just depends on what you see and how you identify your asymptotes. All right, so I would check this out. When you are finished checking all of that out, you will move on to these next problems. Problems 1 through 4 is exactly what you did in the very front that we did together in the first video. Okay? Problems number 1 through 10. Problems 1 through 10. I'm going to go ahead and set up to do problem number 1 with you real quick, just so you could see what the graph looks like. You don't have to create tables or anything like that. You just need your asymptotes so we can identify where these hyperbolas are going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and erase. Give me a quick second. Seeing as you guys probably all got this, I'm going to erase this really fast so I can get with problem number 1 with you. That's okay. And let me just get this done real quick, just so you can see. I can move quickly. That also gives you time to write what you need to write. All right, so let's look at problem number 1. Problem number 1, we have f of x is equal to negative 1 divided by x plus 1 plus 1. All right, so what do we need from here? First of all, step 1, you will need to identify. So step 1, identify h and k. Okay, so h equals and k equals. Okay, now notice that this is x plus h is negative. Okay, so h is equal to negative 1, k is equal to positive 1. Okay, the next thing you need to do is A reflective? So step 2, is A reflective? Reflective, can't even spell today. And the answer is yes, it is. Yes, because A is negative. Okay, so step 3, plot your asymptotes. Plot asymptotes. Okay, so let's go ahead and plot our asymptotes. Okay, and the first one is negative 1, 1. Okay, so it's negative 1, 1. So we want to go ahead and plot negative 1, 1. So h is negative 1, here's negative 1. K is positive 1, so here, right here. Okay, this is my asymptote. So what that means is at this point I'm going to do a horizontal line right across on the one, on the where y is 1. And then I'm going to do where k is 1 and where h is negative 1. So those are my asymptotes. Okay? After you're done plotting asymptotes, you then, because A is negative, you now graph. So don't worry about how big you're making your function or how the size of it. You just need to know where on the crosses do they go. Because A is negative, you're going to go over here. And here you're going to go right here. Okay? The next question it's asking you is what are the vertical and horizontal asymptotes and the domain and range? And then you're going to sketch your graph. So I just sketched it. I gave you my horizontal and my vertical asymptotes, which was x equals negative 1 and y is equal to positive 1. So now my domain and range, let's go ahead and talk about, so plot and graph. Plot asymptotes and graph. That was all in step 3. Step 4, what is my domain and range? So domain is all values of x such that x is not equal to negative 1. My range is all values of y such that y is not equal to positive 1. Easy peasy? Yes? We're good? All right, so continue working on the rest of this worksheet, and if you have any questions, please ask Miss Oviedo for help, and for Miss Blake's kids, obviously you can ask Miss Blake for help. All right, so nice seeing you. See you in the next video.